When it comes to the found footage genre of films, it can often be easy to fall down a rabbit hole of, oh my gosh, did this actually happen? I know I've had that happen to my brain a few times. Heck, I've even played the villain in a few flicks in the genre that sadly never saw the light of day. But they do exist out there. Question for you, what's your favorite found footage movie? Let me know in the comments and let's dive into some heinous titles. How about we kick off today with a flick that technically already has a couple of bands on its record, the Poughkeepsie Tapes. For about a decade, this movie was the stuff of legend, the type of thing that's only found in a creepypasta. If you believe the rumors, this documentary about a serial killer terrorizing Poughkeepsie, New York, used real footage of that man attacking, harming, and killing his victims. Obviously that isn't the case since it's a completely fictional film about a made-up serial killer and not a snuff flick, but that hasn't kept the film from holding on to its true story legacy. So the movie opens with the discovery of the tapes themselves. After uncovering 10 bodies in a residential backyard, the police unearthed something far more menacing: over 800 tapes from a killer, each detailing his heinous exploits. So composed of this found footage, combined with interviews with experts, and one victim's testimony, the movie pieces together the story of the Water Street Butcher. Now this flick is difficult to stomach, and is best accompanied by a lot of trigger warnings. The film's eerie mimicry of early 2000s true crime shows like Forensic Files and Unsolved Mysteries is quite convincing, making it difficult not to get sucked into the reality of it all. Even today, people are tricked into believing that the footage from the tapes is, well, real, despite the red flags pointing to the contrary. This claim to reality is a constant source of controversy for the film, as is its deeply upsetting content. But the thing that stands out most in complaints is that it wasn't the movie people preemptively decided it should be. So back in the day, it premiered at the 2007 Tribeca Film Festival, where it was quickly snatched up by MGM for distribution. Now they marketed the movie heavily, but it would all prove a huge waste of money when the film mysteriously vanished from the studio's 2008 release schedule. Though the movie could be found through less than legal means, it didn't get a wide release until it hit video on demand in 2014. But then MGM was like, we want to make more money. So then they pulled it again for a never-to-be-seen theatrical release. Finally, in 2017, Shout Factory released the movie on DVD and Blu-ray, which is more proof of the value of physical media. So for many of those early viewers, the fun of the mystery was, well, is the footage real? Why did MGM pull it? Was it banned for being too extreme? This and a plethora of other questions swirled around online forums in the time from those early trailers to the movie's eventual home release. What can I say? The killer's tapes are graphic, just not in the way that you would expect. Most of the violence is off-screen, implied, or described but not shown outright, forcing the audience to imagine the most disturbing moments. Spoiler alert, in what's been called the scariest scene in the movie, the killer, posing as a police officer, picks up a hitchhiking woman looking for a ride to the nearest gas station. And when he drives past the station, the woman's face falls into an expression of absolute dread as she realizes this isn't a police officer. And over the next 6 minutes, the audience is forced to watch as she hopelessly pleads for her life. If that doesn't terrify you, damn. I wish. Next up, we've got Capture, Kill, Release. Honestly, the title reminds me of playing Love, Marry, Kill when I was younger, but this isn't as silly. So Jen and Farhang are a seemingly happy married couple living in a suburban area in a nice-sized home. They appear to love each other, they love their lives together, but then Jen begins to talk about their plan to off somebody. They've already decided to do it, and they're gonna film the whole thing. So in this movie, we watch them meticulously decide what weapons we're gonna use. How are we gonna resize our bathroom for a dead body? Home Rentals 101, everybody. And also they gotta pick their victim. So barring films like August Underground, apparently this is as close to a snuff film as you can get without watching the real thing. So, cross that off the bucket list, I guess. The camera zooms in on saws hacking through arms, guts piling up in the tub, and it's an unflinching portrayal of the violence from the perspective of the killers. The viewer is placed in the subject position of both characters, seeing through their eyes and therefore implicating the viewer in the atrocities, which makes the viewing experience that much more uncomfortable on top of seeing red fluids drain out of the tub. Unsettling and uncomfortable, this movie is worth sitting through for the performances alone. Oh, and by the way, we entered this film after the duo have already made and committed to their plan. But as they film each other, the dynamic becomes clear. This isn't just a single psychopath filming his exploits. These are two people with complicated feelings trying to navigate love in the face of the unimaginable. These guys aren't just married, they depend on each other. They are each other's anchors to the point of codependency. The first-person perspective allows us to better understand their minds as they become more and more embroiled in the plan. This shocking found footage film isn't just about that shock factor though, it's about the love and how we come to depend on somebody in a relationship. Sure, in reality, if your partner asked you to kill somebody, you'd be like, alright, I'm out. But this, entertains the idea that maybe you'd want to stay, maybe you'd help. After all, love makes us do crazy things, and because of that mindset alone, that's that's why I'd consider this a dangerous movie. Here's a movie that's less about jump scare effect, more of a lingering sadness situation. More simply put, Lake Mungo is a movie about dread. This 2008 Australian horror film is pegged to the overall concept of dread, that lingering sense of inevitable but unknowable doom that hangs over our heads. To quote journalist Vinnie Mancuso, the experience isn't exactly pleasant, but it is essential to have your rear end absolutely handed to you by a horror movie from time to time. This is the only feature filmmaking effort to date by writer and director Joel Anderson, and this is a ghost story. It's built from grief, one that's immediately recognizable to anybody who's ever lost somebody or briefly lost themselves. It's devastating, it's terrifying, and I think every single person who loves horror with a pulse should watch it at least once, and then immediately call their loved ones. So the first words you hear in the movie are "Alice is missing," which is both the literal driving force of the story and a heart-wrenching hint at its underlying themes. Told in a faux documentary format, the film tells the story of Alice Palmer, a girl of legal driving age who drowned at a dam in a small town in Australia. So in the aftermath, strange occurrences have the rest of the Palmer family believing in ghosts, the supernatural, yeah, kind of the supernatural ones, but also the lingering regrets of a life cut short. The Palmers admit that they never really knew their daughter, so Mother June admits she always struggled to connect with Alice. And there's some secrets are revealed to the point that the girl struggled to feel alive, even before her death. The Palmer's search for closure leads them to the actual Lake Mungo, to a cell phone buried by Alice on a school trip, and the footage she took weeks before her death. The footage has all the washed out graininess of a 2008 flip phone, but that's not quite what makes it feel otherworldly. So as Alice stumbles through the dark, the camera freewheels wildly. You feel untethered from time or location until you finally focus on something approaching from the darkness. Slowly, very slowly, and it's not until it's inches from the frame does the film freeze and tell you what you're seeing. Alice's own bloated, decomposing corpse somehow stumbling out of her future. So there's a couple of reasons why this moment is so effective, and the first being that it's so goddamn scary. Just masterful service-level execution of gluing the audience in place, focusing on a single point, and then just walloping you over the head with an unexplainable image. But the ending of Lake Mungo is also devastating because of what it means. Or more accurately, because it lacks any concrete explanation for those of us left alive. Throughout the many twists and turns, the Palmer family is just searching for answers, because that's what you do when somebody dies. Hey, if you've ever suffered from anxiety or depression, you know what it's like to feel outside your body. To find you're drifting through life like a phantom. Alright folks, next up we have a movie that's so heinous, I'm not even supposed to be talking about it. I can't even say its title, but let's just call it the people-eating mass extinction event of the 1930s and 40s. This flick from director Ruggero Deodato wasn't his first movie about people eating, but definitely the one that got the most flack from the media. So this director's been making films since the 1960s, and he's always had a trademark style. Flashy, grimy pictures with a hardened edge and plenty of schmeksh and violence. He was one of the many Italian directors who facilitated the people-eating boom of the late 70s and had already made one such film, The Last C-Word World, before he got around to this one. So despite his sensationalist style, he had already proven himself not only a very competent director, but one with depth and ideas worthy of cinematic examination. So this is the story of a professor journeying to the Amazon to discover what happened to a film crew, since they're all kind of missing. Lots of brave young Americans, and you realize that this characterization couldn't have been further from the truth. From the offset, the movie looks at how the mass media portrays its fellow Americans, the marginalization of those outside the land of the free, and what it means to be civilized. So the young filmmakers are immediately positioned by the media as victims of local savagery, and when anthropologist Dr. Monroe is sent to find them, it's only through his embracing of the local people that he comes across the lost film reels that will piece the puzzle together. Broadcasting executives back in New York are foaming at the mouth at the prospect of a new documentary, even more sensational than what had been promised to them. And they're so focused on that sensation and the viewing figures that the sizzle reel they show includes such antics as the gang forcibly amputating the leg of their guide literal seconds after he suffers a snake bite. And there's not a lot more I can talk about when it comes to the plot of this one. So as is the case with many old school exploitation flicks, the reels were seized on the grounds of obscenity. But then something crazy happened. Those same reels became evidence in criminal proceedings. And this wasn't just a plain old, too devious for public consumption theatrical release. Folks thought this was a snuff film, and the weirdos who made it were apparently so brazen in their criminality as to throw an official premiere for it. So the director was brought up on killing charges, and was forced to bring his actors in for interviews to prove that they were still alive. He then demonstrated how they performed some of the special effects in the film. Eventually those charges were dismissed, and also, perhaps slightly more in keeping with Italy's progressive artistic reputation, the courts eventually overturned the movie's ban several years later. But by this point, the director and several of his associates had suffered considerable legal troubles, and countries around the world were banning this flick. or at the very least censoring it heavily. Also, before I move on, this film isn't entirely innocent. Although 6 animal deaths appear on screen, several animals were killed for the production, as a scene depicting the monkey's death was done twice, resulting in the death of 2 monkeys. So this film should be still banned for that reason alone, in my opinion. Alrighty everybody, we're gonna end today with a short but unsweet entry, The Taking of Deborah Logan. Mia Hu records the daily lives of Deborah Logan, a woman with Alzheimer's, as a part of her thesis. And as Deborah's behavior becomes increasingly bizarre and violent, it becomes apparent that there's more at work than the ravages of an incurable disease. Chock full of horrific imagery and effective scares, this film was a quietly shelved one that saw a second life on Netflix where it became a cult favorite. Gotta love movies that have already been knocked down for being shown a couple of times. And that brings us to the end of our time, and I think I need some eye bleach. I've been Alexa, your resident ookie spooky girly, and if you enjoyed my ramblings today, could you help us out by giving this video a like, subscribing if you aren't already, hit the bell for more found footage chatter from us here at Top 5 Scary Videos, and I'll see y'all next time, you lovely spooky people.